So we are officially 2 weeks out from opening day for the Toronto Blue Jays, buddy.
We did
It's
it.
coming.
We did it.
Is that a fortnight?
Sure. I don't know.
Fortnight.
Okay.
Is that 2 weeks? Somebody tell us.
Yeah.
I
that might be
just
a
love
fortnight.
the idea. There's a unit of measurement that has gone to the wayside, eh? Once people kind of hit a point where it wasn't taking like 6 weeks to get to market.
Yeah, and then even Fortnite is a massive video game now, but people don't
Right.
use the term Fortnite as a distance of time.
Measurement of time anymore. No.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I
Weird.
just like the idea of back in the day, you had to pack up your wagon and head to market, and it was like a 6-week trek, and they're like, we can't be saying 6 weeks. That's a lot of time. How about 3 fortnight?
3 Fortnite. 3 games of Fortnite. Well, I'll tell you what, this intro feels like it has lasted a fortnight. I'm sure all of the new people to our channel have already tuned out. So now that we're just down to the diehards and the regulars, welcome to the walk-off.
This is how we shake off the stragglers.
Yeah, we weed and thin the herd. So
No, honestly, everybody, welcome to the walk-off. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Scott Belford, joined by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. You can join us and follow us on our socials. So that's Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, the Walk Off Podcast on Instagram. We've got our fantasy baseball league that we're making the draws for tonight. So you still can get involved in that. This should be a really fun little league. It looks like we're going to do 16 teams.
16 teams by the sounds of it. Yeah, we had like 30 people who've shown interest. I can't do a 30-team league. Even 20 felt too daunting of a task. The talent just isn't deep enough, and you end up drafting Kevin Biggio as your starting second baseman. Nobody wants that, let's be honest, right? So we're going to do 16 teams. It's going to be all 5 of us from the walk-off. So yourself, myself, Mark, who runs the Discord, gets a team. Joel and Craig, regulars on Long Toss. You might know them both from TikTok. They each get a team. So that's 5 right there.
Our Patreon members.
Yeah, so we did offer a priority team dispersal to our Patreon. So we have 6 people in Patreon. By the way, thanks to Shane, Joel, Owen, Josh, Jeremy, and Ian for supporting us on Patreon. $4 a month there. So that's 6 more teams for those folks in Patreon, which leaves 5 draw spots. And we have about 20 people who have thrown their name on the list for a draw spot. So
yeah, which is very cool.
If you really want to get in there, add your name to the list and cross your fingers really hard tonight. So
you can probably even sneak in if you add yourself to Patreon as well. Our Discord, by the way, is free for everybody.
Yes.
And it is just a fun group chat of Blue Jays fans and Yankee shit talk. It's fantastic.
It's 24/7 because we have fans from across the globe, right? Like we got Danny in China, we got Phil in Australia. So no matter when you feel like talking about Blue Jays, if you're on the East Coast and you're up at 2 a.m. and you get home from the bar and you want to talk Blue Jays, well, Danny's awake and ready to talk.
Yeah, Danny from China is awake and at it. So it's so funny. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be like, 56 missed messages.
I know. It's ridiculous.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So there is a link in the show notes. Yeah. And again, that is free for everybody. Long Toss, last little tease here before we get into this thing. We've got a big show coming up too. So Long Toss comes at you Sunday. We're back to our regular scheduled time. That is 6 p.m. Eastern till 8 p.m. Eastern. And that, of course, is going to be a panel show. We basically have a bunch of broadcasters, content creators, ball players, and we've got a heck of a lineup coming up. Of course, our regulars, Craig Ballard and Hey Kami from TikTok are joining us. Joel, we've got Ainsley McPhail. Nice. She is a big sports fan and a broadcaster on CTV News in Winnipeg. We've got Blue Jays Dad from Twitter and from his podcast joining us. And as if that's not enough, we could very well have Kyle Johnston of the Buffalo Bison, possibly the Blue Jays bullpen later in the year here. He, very much like Hagen Danner last week, wound up not showing up because he decided to go golfing. What do you do, guys? We can't We can't put these guys' feet to the to the fire too much.
It's
but
an open
hopefully Kyle
invite
does
and
join
the door's
us.
open, right? So
Yeah, exactly. So that again is from 6 to 8 Eastern on Sunday. So join us. That's live on YouTube, by the way, everybody. Okay, big show, man.
a lot to get to.
Lot to get to here. So Randall Grichuk is out. We'll talk yesterday's Jays Rockies trade, and now that Randall G is gone, we'll also need to figure out who the new hottest Blue Jay is. Orelvis Martinez, so the Blue Jays' number 2 prospect in the system, having himself a spring, buddy. But does this mean anything? We will deep dive into that. You were quick to answer that. Yes, it does, he says. Jays have come to terms with all of their arbitration-eligible players, including a contract extension to Matt Chapman. We'll touch on that. Shohei Ohtani gets his own rule, bud. The Shohei Ohtani rule.
Immortalized.
Exactly, as if he wasn't already. And we'll wind up ending the show talking about the lowest-paid teams in baseball and some of the shade being thrown their way by players throughout the league. And on that note, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Where are we starting today? I was just in
Goodbye,
the middle of Googling
Randall.
Shohei Ohtani, so I lost track of my show notes here. I'm the worst. I'm sorry.
Randall Grichuk. Randy G. The Gritch. A man we have a number of times on this podcast called serviceable. He was traded to the Colorado Rockies yesterday morning for left fielder Raimel Tapia and minor league prospect Adrian Pinto. So Adrian Pinto is a Venezuelan kid, 19 years old. He plays shortstop and center field. I know that there's a little bit of hype about this kid, and it is kind of a very Shapiro Atkins move to get this low-level prospect. When I say low-level, I mean he's only played 1 year of professional baseball. He did do very well at 18, but he is 18. Toolsy kid, raw as shit. Okay, this guy is a long ways away from being a major league player, but he does have the potential to be an everyday major leaguer. 5'6", he's short, he's a little light, but he's also 19. And I know I was even reading yesterday that he might even be his 5'6" status was from last year, and he might even be a little taller. That is the ultimate short guy thing to say, by the way.
Measure again. I was slouching.
Yeah, I was slouching. I'm 5'7".
I didn't get a good night's sleep.
I was a little surprised. I don't know how you felt about this. I felt kind of melancholy all day about it. I wasn't expecting to be sad to see Randall Grichuk go, but I was a little bummed, man. Like, Randall Grichuk, he'd been a part of this team for the last 4 years. Of course, coming over in that trade from the Cardinals in 2017, given that 5-year extension in 2018, which probably the biggest blunder that this Atkins Shapiro regime has made. And truth is, let's face it, right, a 5-year, $50 million deal isn't an albatross of a mistake, but it was definitely an overpay for Grichuk. How are you feeling?
Yeah, melancholy might be the right word. I mean, it felt like it was a weird end of an era kind of a feeling. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
it's not like he was a part of the last playoff run that we had.
No.
Right? He came over after that, like you said, in 2017. We finished below 500 that year. Mm-hmm. But it still felt like he kind of was the guy while we were waiting for the kids.
Exactly. That's a great way of putting it. He was kind of the stopgap, and now the
kids are here.
Yeah, you're like, oh, man. Bye, Randy.
Bye, Randy. So, yeah, I mean, it
was
kind of by Randy.
Too.
Like, we feel it all coming when we signed Springer last year. We knew that the Grichuk era was over. It was just a matter of time, but it's still sad, you know? It's retiring an old toy because you got shiny new ones to play with. I mean,
and I love our shiny new toys.
Of course.
But so there is a little bit more to unpack on this. The Blue Jays did send $9.8 million towards the Rockies to help cover Grichuk's $20 million remaining on his salary. Now, Tapia is being paid just under $4 million this year. And if you do the math on the arbitration next year, He's probably going to make about 5, maybe even more. So the Jays are saving maybe $1 million. So this wasn't a trade about dumping salary, which when we first did our video on Grishik yesterday morning before the cash was announced as to how much was going towards the Rockies, we assumed that it was a little bit about the contract, which it turned out it's not. You know, you do the math on the money, it really isn't saving the Jays all that much money. This trade wasn't sexy. And I want to bring up a tweet from friend of the show, Andrew Stoughton.
This
because
was
it's such
the most perfect tweet I've seen in a long time.
So the tweet goes, Tapia sucks in a way that will be more useful to the Jays than the way Grishik sucks. Now, obviously, he's being tongue-in-cheek for the most part, but the two teams did swap 4th outfielders.
Yeah.
How excited can you get, right? But Tapia does bring a skill set to this Toronto Blue Jays team that they were lacking, and that is the truth, right? He's a lefty bat. He's a contact hitter. And we talked about this yesterday on our Grishik video about him being traded. But Tapia hits almost 70% ground ball rate. He has an 83% contact rate. This guy puts the bat on the ball. And there is value to that skill set, especially with this Toronto Blue Jays team that tends to lean a little bit more towards the 3 true outcomes in baseball, which of course is strikeout, walk, or home run. Tapia does none of these things. He's got a 16% career strikeout rate. Last year was 13%, which is far below the league average. He walks 6% of the time, which is far below the league average, and he doesn't have a ton of power. But again, this is a dude that his skill set is so different from what Randall Grishik did, right? Randall Grishik had an over 30% strikeout rate. So he was doubling what Tapia does. And this does allow Montoyo to go to the bench late in the game. Let's say there's a runner on second base, pinch hit Tapia. He can expect him to put the ball in play, right? 83% of the time he's making contact. That is quite a card to play when the game is on the line. Because I know that was one thing that us Blue Jays fans would pull our hair out over Randall Grishik, right? 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, and you just need him to move the guy from second base and bring him in, and he strikes out. And that's frustrating to watch.
He's either a strikeout or a sac fly.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is all stuff that Grishik didn't do. The skill sets that Tapia is bringing to this Toronto Blue Jays. And
sorry,
I know
just,
I saw a lot.
Just before you move on,
in.
just that Stoughton tweet that summed it up about how he sucks in a more useful way than Grishik sucked.
To the Blue Jays.
To the Blue Jays, yes. He fits that piece, like you said. Late game, we need a pinch hit or a pinch runner because he's got the speed too. But you just need, like, you can't do a sac fly with 2 out. Right? And we don't need a sac fly hitter at the bottom of the order. We need a guy getting on base so that when we roll that order over, we got base runners for guys like George Springer, Bo Bichette, and Vladdy, right? So, I love it. It's not a sexy trade, you're absolutely right, but it is.
And Randall Grishik is going to do well in Colorado, the higher
Hopefully.
elevation.
I think so.
I think he has potential to hit 30 home runs again. I wish him all the best. I think that this was a really good trade for both teams, and this is one of those ones where, you know, when you do the shakeout after everything goes and the money looks the same, it's just these two players' skill sets reach a different a different need for each team.
You know what the comparable here is for this? The feeling I have about Randall Grishik, it's the same feeling I had when we traded away Rowdy Tellez last year. Rowdy Tellez also felt like kind of that stopgap 2017. He was the first wave of kids that we brought up, and there was a little bit of excitement. But then when Vladdy moved over to first, it was inevitable. Like, Rowdy's time in this lineup has unfortunately come to an end. Had to see him go eventually. I mean, it was kind of fun to keep an eye on Rowdy with the Brewers last year.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
wish
And
him all the
it was
best.
exciting to see him do well. Like you wish these kids who didn't maybe get the opportunity they needed on the Jays or was just a redundancy on this team to do well. And that's exactly what Rowdy and Randy were. So all the best to both of them, right?
Very cool.
I did want to, before we move on, Adam, I did want to just bring up, I know on Blue Jays Twitter, I'm sure the same applies to Instagram, there were a lot of posts about Tapia, maybe he improves this year, right? Maybe the Blue Jays saw something in him that they could improve his swing. I just want to point out to everybody, he is turning 29 years old. This is probably not the case. He probably is what he is. Not that the Blue Jays haven't fallen ass backwards into some late bloomers before, but
I was gonna say you can't talk like that and also be a Teoscar and Batista and an Encarnacion fan. Like maybe we got the next Joey Bats on our hand here, Scott. Come on.
Okay.
Bat flip tilapia. No, that's a fish. Tapia.
Tilapia.
All right, well, let the roasting of the comments begin.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
All right. So one very cool thing that the Blue Jays managed to do was avoid arbitration hearings with all of their arbitration-eligible players. So they did come to agreements with every single one of their players. The big names, of course, being Teoscar Hernandez. He is now joining the $10 million club. Teoscar got a raise. He's making $10.2 million in 2022. And then Vladdy also got a big raise. He's making $8 million. I think it's just under that. 7.9, I think, is where
I
he's
always
settled.
forget how good Teoscar is.
Right?
It's weird. Like, just weird. He's just a 40 home run, 100 RBI guy hitting.
He's just overshadowed a little.
It's just, yeah, it's weird. He really quietly became a superstar.
He did. That's a really great point. He really quietly became a superstar, which nothing but good news for the Blue Jays there. Of course, Matt Chapman was also given a pseudo extension.
Yeah.
Basically, the Blue Jays bought out his last 2 years of arbitration. I think this really does go to show how much players want to avoid arbitration. It is not a fun process, man.
No.
It is a process where literally the team is bringing in stats to point out where you suck, why you should make less money. It is a process that has ruined some relationships, man, between front offices and players. I mean, we even saw it firsthand in Toronto with Marcus Stroman. He is still bitter about his arbitration hearings in Toronto. And he's not alone.
You never know it. He keeps it to himself.
Yeah, you never know it. Marcus Stroman, he's just zip his mouth and throw away the key. You'll never hear Marcus say something. But despite how Stroman handled it, this is not something new, right? This is something a lot of players have bitterness towards. So I think the Blue Jays buying out Chapman's arbitration and just kind of rolling the dice on maybe they wind up paying him a little more than they would have, whatever. Mm-hmm. It goes a long way when you're trying to sign guys later on. Not even Chapman. Mm-hmm. It just shows goodwill towards the player from a front office standpoint, which is something that players look for when they're looking to sign in free agency, right? Mm-hmm. So Chapman's extension isn't really an extension. He's still with this team for 2 years, and then he's going to hit free agency. He's making $12.5 million a year instead of the $9.5 he would this year, and then probably 14, 15 next year. So it really does break down to about the same, but without the process of needing to be like, here's why you suck, right? Which is great.
Welcome,
if you can avoid
and
that.
You suck.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting, dude, and I don't know if you heard this, but Bichette and Manoah turned down their pre-arb deals, taking less money as kind of a protest to the formula the Blue Jays use to determine the raises. So there's actually a friend of the show and truly one of the smartest minds in baseball with Sportsnet. Arden Zwelling wrote a great article about this, and that's actually on the Sportsnet webpage now. If you really want to know the nitty-gritty behind Manoah and Bichette turning this down. But basically, it sets them up for I guess bigger raises in arbitration next year. Bichette is his first year of arbitration next season. Manoah's probably going to be in 2 years. And now the Jays can't go to them and say, well, last year you took the deal. You couldn't have been that upset with our formula for raises. We're using the same formula here in arbitration. So this kind of gives them some leverage, I guess, in next year's arbitration argument process, however you want to put it. I don't think that this is a thing to be worried about as Blue Jays fans. This is a relationship that's souring. This is more of a business move on both of their play.
Well, and this would be a decision that would be almost entirely out of their hands too, right? This is just the agent says, "Hey, listen,
100%." The agent's
we're going this direction. Here's how we're going to handle it, and they just go, "Okay, whatever. I got to go to practice. It's 5:30. I'm on my way. Breakfast club." Right?
And I mean, they are going to make this money up. I'm sure this is what the agent told them. Listen, this is going to give us leverage to get this money right back. But Alek Manoah could be making $6,000 more this year, and Bichette could be making $22,000 more. I mean, obviously, this isn't big money to these kids, especially Bichette, who has a fairly wealthy ex-MLB player as a dad, right? He's not worried about funds, I'm sure.
Hey,
but
$6,000 a year. That's the difference between being an open mic comedian and being a Canadian headliner. So
don't tell everyone my salary. No.
No, it's a lot of money though. It is
it is, especially if you look at Manoah, a guy who is probably making $24,000 like 1 year ago before being called up. So okay. We are going to move past this next thing really quick, but I did want to bring up, you constantly hear out of American broadcasters' mouths, oh, baseball's dying. The sport is dying. It's skewing older and older. We need new viewers. Well, I'll tell you right now, that is not the case in Canada. Blue Jays fever is alive and well, and I've got a little stat here that's pretty fun to prove it. Almost 500,000 fans tuned in to watch the Blue Jays at the Pirates on Sportsnet for the first game of spring training. 500,000 people tuned into a game that means shit all, buddy.
Yeah, it's a nothing game against a nothing team, too.
Yeah. It's a good, man.
It's wild. Hey, I know even out west here, man. I saw a headline in one of the Edmonton newspapers. It was like, a lot of things suck, the Blue Jays don't. And I thought that summed it up perfectly. There's a lot of shitty things going on right now in the world, but thankfully we have the Blue Jays as our light at that end of the tunnel, something to be hopeful.
It is a great time to be a Toronto Blue Jay fan. And on that note, I want to talk Orelvis Martinez. Okay, this is the Toronto Blue Jays' number 2 prospect in their system. This is a gentleman who is having himself a spring. So before we get into this,
a year last year,
he really did put himself on the map as one of the top prospects in all of baseball, let alone the Blue Jays system. Now, I think it's important for you to give your little spiel on spring training, which you gave to us regularly last year during spring training, but I have yet to hear it out of your mouth. So what does spring training mean, Adam?
It means everything. Buy into it. Believe what you see. It's the real deal. When bad things happen, this is my real answer. When bad things happen in spring training, they don't mean anything, right? Pitchers are just working on stuff. It means nothing. And then when good things happen in spring training, it means even less.
Yes.
Right? When Vladdy hits a bomb on the first pitch or whatever, he's doing it against a guy who was working on stuff in spring training, right? When Orelvis Martinez hits a home run in his first at-bat in spring training, it means nothing. He's doing it off a guy who's also working on stuff and just getting ramped up, right? When Biggio goes 2 for 2 with a stolen base, it means nothing.
Yes.
We're just trying to get healthy and stretch our legs. We got a long marathon ahead of us. That's all we're trying to do. Injuries mean something. Everything else means nothing. That's spring training.
So with that disclaimer, and thank you, Adam.
Yes.
Let's get into Orelvis Martinez because this kid is legitimate and he is exciting. He's 20 years old and he hits for big power. This is a tool 20-year-olds don't bring to the table, okay? Power is normally a tool that is developed a little further into their professional baseball career. 22, 23, 24 is when we start to see guys really have some pop. Orelvis already has it. And let's face it, us Blue Jays fans, probably a little spoiled because Orelvis is hitting for power, and we're like, yeah, of course he is. Doesn't every 20-year-old prospect hit for major power because of a young Vladimir Guerrero Jr. who challenged for the MVP at 22 years old? But what Orelvis is doing truly is special. Now, Orelvis has not looked overwhelmed against big league pitching so far this spring training, again, with the caveat that that means absolutely nothing. One thing I have noticed about Orelvis is that he is prone to swinging at that breaking ball. This is a very 20-year-old Achilles heel, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of similar to what we saw in our big stud pitcher that everyone loves to death, Alek Manoah, last year, right? Because he had a big spring. And
But
everybody
he loved to chase that breaking ball as a hitter. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Alek Manoah, everyone was loving him in spring. Is he going to make the team? Of course he didn't. But then he continued to thrive in AAA. And by early May, everyone was yelling, call him up, call him up. We were on the other side of things. And it's funny because both you and I loved Alek Manoah. Mm-hmm. But I know both of us said things like, let's wait. Like, let's see what happens. Do not call him up because there's injuries to starting pitchers, and we just desperately need a guy. And that's kind of what it felt like when he was first called up, but he handled it with the poise and composure of a man far older, right? Like,
yeah.
He handled the pressure of a Major League Baseball being thrown into the deep end of the pool much better than a 23-year-old in a lot of cases would. So my question for you, Adam, is where are you at on Orelvis Martinez? Because there are Jays fans on Twitter right now that are starting to say things like he should break with the team April 8th, that he should be the Blue Jays starting second baseman at the start of this season. How are you feeling?
Well, I mean, he hasn't played over high A in his career.
Yes.
So that doesn't build a lot of confidence. 20 years old is very young.
Very young.
He's got all the hype in the world behind him. He's having a good spring training. I mean, he passes the eyeball test. Let's be real, right? When you look at him, everything about him says stud.
Ball player.
Do we have a hole at second base? Yes. Could he fill that hole reasonably well? Probably. He's also not a second baseman.
Yes.
Right? We've been bringing him up as a shortstop and third baseman. And there's this weird, I think because Marcus Semien just did it so phenomenally last year.
Yes.
There's just this weird acceptance that anybody can just play second base. If you're just a
Which
good
is so
shortstop.
insulting to second base, right?
It is, isn't it? It's just a weird, and I think also a little bit insulting to Marcus Semien. The fact that he just made a major positional switch and did it so admirably and made it look so easy. Yeah. That we've just, because all offseason through free agency and everything, it was well, go sign Correa. Just put him at second base. He's never played there before, but how hard could it be, right? Oh, just trade for Jose Ramirez. Just put him at second base. He'll figure it out. How hard could it be? It's not that easy.
No, it's not.
I mean, you're
so I love everything you just said because I'm personally I really don't want to see Orelvis break with this team. I think it's way too early personally. I would rather see the front office handle this very similar to the way they did Manoah, right? Yeah. Where you let him continue to give you no choice. Maybe even put him in AAA.
I was going to say,
he skips AA.
Yeah, that might be the still because that's still a real
it's still a big jump.
And it's a very nice vote of confidence from the organization to this kid that hey, we recognize the success you're having and the hard work you're putting in and the results, and like we're not going to hinder your development. So like we do want to challenge you. Like skipping AA is a big deal.
A big deal.
Very
yes.
big deal.
And AAA is filled with guys who have experience at the show. It's filled with pitchers that are wily veterans that are going to mess with a 20-year-old's timing. So let him learn a little bit more before we start jumping off the deep end, in my opinion, and acting like this kid's ready to play with the Toronto Blue Jays in the major leagues in 2 weeks, a fortnight. I don't think so.
Fortnite. He's at least 3 fortnights away.
Now, listen, is it possible that this kid pushes his way into this lineup this season in 2022? Maybe it is. Maybe we do see him in a scenario in, let's say, July where he has just been a world beater in Double and AAA, or maybe just AAA, and has given this front office nothing but more confidence that he can handle himself and the ups and downs that come with a major league season. But at this point, at 20 years old, I think it's much better for his development to just give him a little more time. And we're not desperate for a second baseman. Biggio and Espinal can handle that position admirably. We're fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get a decent batting average, like low power, good fielding out of either of those two. Whatever combination of Espinal and Biggio we have at second base. Relative to the rest of this team, is second base a hole for us? Yeah, absolutely. Realistically, though, is it a hole? No, it's not. It is like serviceable.
Exactly.
Above average serviceable. Now, I will say,
Randall
though,
Grichuk.
Yes, it's Randall Grichuk. With Martinez, I mean, like, I know I really sounded like absolutely no for him breaking it with this team, but, like, also, I fucking wouldn't be surprised. I mean, after what Manoah did last year, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I think that's very clear to anybody who's followed the channel for more than a day knows I don't know what I'm talking about.
We proved time and time again, Adam, that we are huge ball fans, but mostly we're just comedians who are throwing shit out.
Just so much other. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, I never in a million years would have guessed Manoah got called up when he did.
Yeah, me too.
Right? So,
never in a million years would I have bet that he stuck and progressed and actually dominated. So what do I know?
Hey, the only thing keeping him out of like realistic rookie of the year conversations was the fact that he wasn't with the team all year.
Yeah.
Right?
Had he been called up a month earlier, maybe even 2 weeks.
I'm not saying he would have won. I mean, like Randy Rosarena, like there was a lot of like legitimate
he would have finished
higher, but
he would have finished higher in voting than 8th.
Yeah.
Okay, I did want to really quickly talk Greg Bird.
Okay.
I want to talk Greg Bird for a few reasons. Number one, obviously, with Randall Grichuk leaving, there is a hole for a new hot dad on this team.
Yes.
Greg Bird seems to fill that role. Oh, my goodness. Blue Jays Twitter is hilarious. The Toronto ladies loving this man. Mm-hmm. He is making them swoon, if you will. That's a word, right? Swoon?
Swoon, yes. You know, he looks like he knows his way around a backyard barbecue, for sure.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? He's also having himself a heck of a spring. He is a left-handed bat. I don't know where you fall on Greg Bird. I mean, it would be cool if he continued to just dominate to the point where they couldn't leave him off this roster. The one thing about this, if they're going to add a lefty bat just for the sake of a lefty bat, I think I'd rather it be Josh Palacio, who can play all 3 outfield positions, has a little bit more versatility to him, a little bit younger, a little bit. He's homegrown too, you know. He's come up through the Blue Jays system, whereas Greg Bird was just added on waivers. You know, he was signed to a minor league contract. Listen, Greg Bird very well could be a very solid player, but man, his positional versatility is 0. He's a first baseman and a DH. He's kind of blocked, right?
Why not just have him play second? That would be an easy transition for anybody. You know what they say? If you can't play first, play second.
Yeah, exactly. They do say that, don't they?
Not good enough defensively to play DH? Try second.
It is actually going to be kind of interesting to see who is on the bench for this Toronto Blue Jays team. And it's really the only question marks for this team. Is it going to be Greg Bird? Is it going to be Josh Palacio? Is it going to be – who is it going to be? Who's the fourth outfielder, fifth outfielder? I mean, obviously, Tapia is kind of slotted into that fourth outfielder spot. But with a 28-man roster this year – they've got a couple more spots. Maybe we do see them carry 5 outfielders. But while we're talking roster crunches,
yes,
this moves beautifully into the catching crunch that is currently.
Just before we get there, I just want to add one point about Bird and the left-handedness of the whole situation, which will then lead also into our catching, because we do have a left-handed catcher. This has kind of been my whole point with left-handed hitters, though. It's like everybody clamors for like, oh, we need a left-handed hitter. And then we provide like a list of like 3 or 4 left-handed hitters. And everyone's like, not that one. I want a better one than that. And like, that's the point, right? It's like,
yeah,
sure. Like would Juan Soto fit nicely on this team? Yeah. Would
nice
Freddie Freeman have been a decent hitter in this lineup? For sure. But like, Palacios, left-handed hitter. Nobody's getting excited about that. Look, I'd rather just have a better hitter who hits right-handed is the response, right? Greg Bird.
No, and I get what you're saying. I know you're not
Kevin
against.
Biggio. Everybody wants to trade Biggio. He's a left-handed bat. We're about to talk catchers, right? Guess what? The one that everybody wants to either cut or trade is a fucking left-handed bat. I don't know. Let's talk catchers.
No, you do make a good point about handedness, which is if you're going to get better production out of a righty, then the fact the other guy hits left is irrelevant.
Thank you. That's all That's all I've ever said. Like,
yes.
Okay.
However, you do see the value of a lefty and throwing that wrench in what the pitcher's seeing, correct? Like, you do get...
When Joel explained it as, like, if we had 2 left-handed bats in the heart of this order and, like, to be able to mix that in ahead of Laddie or whatever the case where, a pitcher's kind of hasn't thrown that, cutter away in 15 pitches or whatever, like, sure, that seems valuable. So if we can add Juan Soto and Freddie Freeman this offseason, I say go for it. That is my support of left-handed. Short of that, I don't fucking care. If it's our 7th hitter in the lineup, I really don't give a shit if he's left-handed, right-handed, or if he just goes up there and lays one down for a bunt. Let's move on to catcher. Can we please move on
to catchers? Hey, listen. Everyone has their hill they'll die on. This is yours.
This is mine. Yes, sir.
Okay, let's talk catching because there is a crunch going on this Toronto Blue Jays roster. Are the Toronto Blue Jays going to carry 3 catchers? Adam? Thoughts? Do you want to see 3 catchers on this bench?
Well,
now, Alejandro Kirk, before we really get into this, is having a heck of a spring. This is a guy who does profile very well with the bat. He's another guy that puts the bat on the ball. He's a high-contact hitter. His potential has not even been touched yet, I don't think. 22 years old.
Okay,
Could
so
DH a lot.
I don't 100% understand the enthusiasm for Alejandro Kirk. Like, the vibe on Alejandro Kirk, I understand. There is like a real like groundswell.
He's a high
of
ceiling guy
whenever
for
he
sure.
comes up, right?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, we're gonna talk stats here for a second, and I know it's gonna put a lot of people to sleep on their drive to work, but like the words you just used to describe Alejandro Kirk, high contact hitter. Guess who had a better batting average than he did? Reese McGuire.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we talk power in his bat. Well, he's got all this pop in his bat. Well, guess who was on pace for more home runs than Alejandro Kirk was last year? Like, if you do it 162 games, because all 3 of these catchers played roughly Like, it was a pretty even split. I think Danny Jansen played 70 games, Kirk played 60 games, and Reese McGuire played 78. So it was about a 1/3 split pretty evenly across the board. But if you extrapolate their home runs per game to a full season, Kirk is a 20 home run hitter, and Jansen is a 25 home run hitter. So, like...
Jano,
I mean, love the guy. You know, we were low on him last year, or the year before. You know, we were both impressed by him in the second half of last season after a slow start, and I think we're both anticipating a big season from him this year. I think he takes a real step forward. What is it about Kirk that does it for you? Because it's not his speed. No. It's not his defense. What is it about his bat that, like, just, and I'm not trying to be, like, difficult.
No,
I genuinely want the explanation here so that I can work through it and I can get on board with all the hype for Alejandro Kirk. Because to me, it's Jansen and it's McGuire, and Kirk we need to trade and get something back in return for.
Potential? Is that a fair answer? Do you accept it's potential?
I don't know. Like it's kind of a cop-out, man.
It might be a bit of a cop-out. Listen, he is a guy who in 2020 really came out of the gates hot. When he's hot, he looks great. Small sample sizes? I don't know, man.
Okay, so 2020, yeah. I mean, like small Kirk. Sample size for everyone. Kirk. He hit 375 in 2020, but that was through 9 games and 25 plate appearances. So the 9 games he was with us, sure, he hit great. The 60 he was with us last year, nothing about his stat line blows me away.
I don't know.
I mean, if we're talking potential, I just don't know why we would have a potential guy when we have Gabriel Moreno, who is like real potential, waiting in the wings, waiting to take that spot as the potential youngster. Like, I just say we platoon Jansen and McGuire. We get a left-handed bat out of McGuire. I don't know.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Adam.
And I want to love Kirk. I really do.
We haven't seen the peak of Kirk, is what I'm saying. I think his ceiling is higher than both McGuire and Jansen's.
Dude, there are people on like Twitter, Instagram, for sure. There's a bunch of people in our Discord, and they're gonna fucking roast me after I say this. Yeah. They want fucking Alejandro Kirk to be our like regular DH this year. I might be exaggerating that, but they want.
No, like, there's tons of people who want that.
That's insanity to me. That's insane to think.
It's insane for a few reasons, in my opinion. I mean, I think we need to keep that DH position open to give guys days off, especially our big guy, Georgie Springer, especially after last year's season where George only played 78 games, gang. He only played 38 at center. If it hadn't been for that DH spot being open, we would have only seen him for a quarter of the season instead of half. So I don't like the idea of having, let's say, Alejandro as a full-time DH. I do like Kirk's bat. I do. And I do think that this is a guy who can very well put up 280 average, 30 home runs. Maybe not quite, but he's going to be. He is so slow. Like, he's such an odd body type for baseball. I don't know.
Man, okay, so one other question here.
We're both going to get roasted in the comments for this.
Melted for this. People are just unsubscribing to all of our stuff right now. But this was a conversation I had yesterday or the day before. But it was about like a situation. And so the situation was, if Danny Jansen is our starting catcher and Alejandro Kirk is our DH, and Jansen leaves the game with an injury, if Kirk comes into the game as a catcher, we lose our DH position. That's how the DH rule works. So then our pitchers have to either hit for themselves or we have to pinch hit. So I guess the point that was being made was that was an argument for keeping all three, was because in a situation like that, then you don't have to take Kirk off of DH. You can just put Reese McGuire in to catch. But that just feels like a less than 1% chance of that even happening. So I can't see that really being a factor. Am I crazy on that? Because it feels like I think Kirk was a DH like 6 times last year. So like 2% of games he's the DH. and now we're just gonna do roster construction around the like 0.01% chance that Danny Jansen has bad tacos while Kirk is DH, and now we're like, because even if that does happen, by the time we get to the bullpen, it's not an issue. We just pinch hit, right? Like we just pinch hit for our pitcher. So it's only an issue if Kirk is DH and Jansen has bad tacos and has to leave the game in like the second or third inning. Right? Short of that, it's a non-issue. So I don't see that being a reason that McGuire is brought up. Am I crazy on that, or do you think that's like an actual factor? Because I don't know. I do think that McGuire makes the team, but I think it's the left-handed bat and that he's actually like a half-decent catcher.
The front office is high on Kirk. I just trust them, I guess. I don't know, man.
Like that, honestly, that's the best thing that you've, or not the best, but like the best argument I've heard so far as to why get on this believe in Kirk train is just because the front office does.
Yeah.
And they clearly know what they're doing. So if they see something that I don't understand, I guess, honestly, and I'm not just being a smart ass, that's probably a good enough reason
and
for me to buy in.
Let's face it, when Kirk has a big game, he does have a big game. And we have seen flashes of brilliance out of him, which is very exciting to see one of your young high-end prospects pulling off some really cool stuff. His sample size is so small, though. Let's face it, right? 2020,
69 games.
Very small.
Nice.
He hasn't even played half of a season. All the best to him. I like Kirk. I think Kirk has a place on this team. I am having a tough time kind of defending him to you right now because he hasn't got a lot of service time. He hasn't shown a lot in those 69 games that he's done. He was great when they first brought him up, and we were desperate for any sort of offense out of that catching position.
He was a real spark plug in 2020. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then he suffered from some injuries last year. It took him a little while to get called up. He was average.
Do you think that part of the reason fans love him is because he looks like a maniac? Like I know he doesn't run the bases with his tongue out, but in my mind, every time I picture him like rounding first, he's like he's even making the sound. I don't know why. So, he's just a crazy guy. I don't know. Anyways, you have anything else to add about catchers here?
All I want to add is that my dream here is that in June we are apologizing to everyone for this take. Which isn't even really a take. We're just like, we're not sure.
Yeah.
We haven't really shit talked Kirk. We're just like, I don't know. So
I don't get it. Yeah, okay.
Take that for what it is. You did talk DH and the position there, which kind of goes well into the Shohei Ohtani rule. The MLB did finally come out with a hard decision on what's going to happen with the DH rule, and that is that pitchers can continue to DH after they are removed from the game. Of course, this is literally applicable to only Shohei Ohtani, so the Angels were obviously thrilled about this. Kind of a bummer from a fan standpoint that isn't an Angels fan, because I loved watching them put Shohei Ohtani in left field in the sixth inning, like after he came out of pitching. I thought that was very cool. But, I mean, on a logical standpoint, injuries, all that sort of thing, obviously this is the best thing that could happen for the Angels and probably Shohei Ohtani. So,
can I ask you one question about the Shohei Ohtani MVP situation?
Yes.
Not saying... trust me, I'm not saying he didn't deserve MVP last year, even as a big Blue Jays homer and Vladdy and all that, right? I get it. What he did last year was awesome. 46 home runs, massive number, 100 RBIs, 20 stolen bases too. Let's not forget about that. Pitching was...
He was the best pitcher on the Angels.
Best pitcher on the Angels. Like, he was their ace. So I think absolutely fits the criteria of an MVP. Like, just the fact that he did both, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Does he what do we do though? Like, and I don't mean like, obviously you and I don't get a vote, but like as a sport, does he just default into MVP for as long as he's doing this?
Yes.
Because last year the argument was like, well, part of the argument was it's never been done before. Or it hasn't been done in 100 years, right? Well, now the argument is, well, it hasn't been done since last year. Someone did it last year.
Yeah.
Happens to be the same guy, but
I don't know, man. I have a hard time not saying yes to that question. If he continually puts up 45 home runs, 20 stolen bases, a 3.5 ERA, and is the top pitcher on his team, I don't know, man. That's a tough argument.
So the follow-up question there then is, and maybe this is just something because we're already getting close to an hour here, so maybe we save the rest of this for long toss on Sunday. But how much of a regression is he allowed to backslide before he leaves that conversation? Like if he has an ERA of around 4, right, and he's only putting up 30 home runs,
Vladdy wins.
Really?
I think so.
Because I don't know. Like I agree, but also I don't see that big of a difference. Like the whole argument for me about that I bought into with Shohei winning the MVP last year was that he was really good offensively and as a pitcher, and it was that was helpful, right? So if a guy's putting up 30 home runs and pitching, that's like whatever value a pitcher has towards MVP, you throw 30 fucking home runs on top of that.
I think you touched on it earlier in this talk. He's buried himself. Like any regression now, the voters are they're just humans. They're just sports writers voting. And they're going to be like, oh, 30 home runs, 4 ERA. Well, not my MVP, right? So I truly do believe if we see regression to that level where he's hitting 15 fewer bombs and his
what if he's
ERA
just hitting in the 30s? What if it's high 30s? Like he's hitting like 38. Like I don't know.
I think it would depend. Like... If Shohei hits 38 home runs and Vladdy hits 50, I think Vladdy has it.
Yeah.
We're going to need to see what happens with everything else, though. Like we can give all sorts of scenarios with Shohei and his numbers and stuff. If home run production goes down and Shohei hits 35 and the leader hits 40, maybe he is still in the talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's end on this. I know we are getting bulky here. I did just want to really quickly talk about the least money spent in free agency. So the most money spent in free agency was the Texas Rangers. They spent $580 million this offseason. In at number 2 was the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that is half of what the Rangers did at $266 million. The Mets are $258. The Tigers in at 4 at $235. The Phillies at $204. And then it goes down from there. The Jays are up there too. The Jays are in the top 10 for spending in free agency this year. But I did want to talk about the Cleveland Guardians and the Oakland Athletics because the Cleveland Guardians in free agency this year have spent $900,000. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. But even more embarrassing, the Oakland Athletics gang have spent zero. A goose egg. They have made zero acquisitions in free agency, which is just what the hell, man.
Wow. Okay, so, I mean, at face value, it's ugly, right? And they're getting roasted on social media and all the sports networks and everything, and rightly so. But, I mean, the devil's advocate in me, and you know I love to play contrarian. It's easier for the competitive teams to just get those guys. Like, I think, jokingly talked about Carlos Correa to the Orioles, right? And they made an offer on him. I mean, which kind of surprised everyone.
A legitimate offer. Yes.
$300 million, right? So guess what? They were I think, bottom 3 on that list, right?
Yeah.
If he signs with them, they're a top 3 on that list.
That's true.
Right? So, like, some of it does, I think, have to do with, like, a victim of circumstance to a little bit, right? Like, you know, not to entirely let them off the hook, but I think...
By no means, because it is still BS.
right? It is total. It's total BS, and we got to get the league minimum salary cap or whatever. We got to put a floor on it and get people spending, 50, 60 million. Like it's embarrassing numbers.
Like
But
let's be serious. Zero spent is full on tanking. They're full on tanking.
yeah, well,
I mean, they're not even signing. They're not even signing guys to minor league contracts. They're literally sending all their high end players off, and they're just going to replace them with guys that they've got coming up through the system.
Well, I feel like I just watched a movie about this recently. It was called Major League.
Yeah.
Isn't that the plot of Major League? Was just get rid of anybody with any dollars and try and lose as many games as possible so that we can move to Las
the team
Vegas?
to Miami. Yeah.
Oh,
okay,
man.
let's end it there. By the way, Major League is our movie in February for Patreon. Yes. So we review baseball movies as our added bonus if you join Patreon. We don't put any Blue Jays content behind a paywall, which we've been told, right? We're doing Patreon wrong, but nope. We want to continue this walk-off Blue Jays community, so...
If I'm being completely honest, though, those movie reviews are the best things we put out. I mean, it's for sure the thing that we spend the most time preparing for.
Yeah, it's for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All
right, buddy, let's end it at that. Did you have anything to add here before we call it a cast?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, well, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone out there who has hit who has viewed our videos, who has hit subscribe on YouTube. I mean, we might be at 3,000 subscribers by opening day, which is so freaking cool. Like, I am just blown away. I think we're at 2.87 right now.
We're like 100 short. So
yeah, we're about 130 short. So, and we've been kind of gaining 10 a day. So honestly, to everyone who has hit subscribe, we thank you so very much. Audio continues to go up. Everyone who has hit subscribe, wherever you get your audio, that is very appreciated. Just honestly, this walk-off community, we talk about this all the time, buddy, when we're off camera, but it's pretty mind-blowing. We're just a couple of dummies out of Alberta who love the Blue Jays, and I don't know, we found a group of people who want to be involved. So thank you to everybody.
Very, very cool. All right, cheers, and we'll see you and everybody else on Sunday.